Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello.
to A Day in a Life, where we speak to companies within the realms of themed entertainment and speak to the people who bring the magic to life. And I'm really excited today. I am Kathy
I,
Dixon, and my absolutely exuberant guest, well, not guest, what am I saying? My exuberant co host, Kelly Bailey. I love you. Anyway.
I love you. Everybody, if you do not know, today is Kathy Dixon's birthday, and I just need to say that out loud because I'm so excited for um, like we get to share your birthday with you, just like a little inkling, little bit of your day, and I'm just so excited for that. But
It's the
in
start of a
addition,
day. It's
I know.
wonderful. And we've got like really fabulous people who I know and adore and super happy to have on the show for like my birthday show. So yeah, we're gonna be here with Scenario.
Oh my gosh,
And
I'm
isn't it
so I'm
exciting?
so jazzed. I'm so jazzed.
I'm really
Thank
excited
you.
because because like we've been speaking to a couple of different groups and now we get to talk about production, which is really exciting as well. So yes.
Absolutely. This is so exciting. Okay, so we have with us today, we have Mr. Don Scott, we have Miss Arielle Rassel, and then we have Mr. Matt Kent. And oh, Dave, look at you. You're
Oh,
getting Xavier and then Dave. I'm really glad Dave's watching. By the way, he had no idea that we were interviewing Scenario today until like yesterday. I'm like, where have you been, Dave? David Hall, where have you been? Um, Sorry for outing you like that, Dave. I just had to. Anyway, should we bring our guest on?
yes, we should.
Okay. Don,
No.
Matt,
Hello.
Ariel.
I feel like I'm being called down onto a game show.
Come on
Come
down.
on down.
It's the Kelly effect.
I love you, Dave. Oh my gosh. So, happy Friday, y'all.
Happy Friday.
Absolutely.
And happy birthday, Kathy.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know of any other group that I'd want to spend, a couple of great hours talking to on Kathy's Friday. Oh my gosh. So, my brain just is going 900 miles a minute, and I apologize. I'm legitimately so excited that I don't even know where to start. I guess we should probably start at the beginning.
Yeah,
we
should do intros.
Yes.
And everybody can go through and introduce themselves and say hi to the guests. So how about you start, Don?
Sure. Hi, I'm Don Scott, and I'm the director of production for Scenario on the East Coast in Orlando.
And Arielle?
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm Arielle Rassel. I manage the design team for our Orlando office.
And I'm Matt Kent. I'm the director of new business development for Scenario. I'm based in Orlando and looking for business all over the world.
And would you guys be able to share a little bit about your personal journeys, what brought you into themed entertainment, and kind of what led you up to your different roles that you currently have?
I think Arielle should kick that one off.
Yes.
Sure. Cool. So yeah, I've been in the industry for about a decade now. I graduated from SCAD kind of right before the inception of the themed entertainment program there. Actually, I very briefly crossed paths with George, who many of the themed entertainment folks from SCAD know. Kicked off my career interning for a zoo and aquarium and museum design firm in Seattle called the Portico Group while I was still in school, and then went on to intern for Imagineering here in Florida. That was enough to tell me, yes, absolutely, I want to do this. This is a lot of fun. As someone who initially had goals of working on Broadway and kind of discovered themed entertainment of, oh, this is this whole world of basically permanent theater and sets. That sounds great. My degree is in interior design. After I finished up in Imagineering, I went into more kind of traditional architect of record work for themed entertainment, working for Morris Architects, who's now Hewitt Zollers. That took me out to LA, where I was basically a consultant for Imagineering, working on Pandora. That wrapped up, and they said, time to go back to Florida. And I said, thanks, but no. And stayed in LA for another 4 years or so, worked for Universal Creative in Hollywood for a little while there, spent a couple of years at Thinkwell, got to travel all over the globe. That was kind of my first foray and transition from design into more of management, which learned a lot that I don't love sitting by myself all day and staring at CAD. I really love having a finger in every pie of the project and getting to pull the process together and work with people. And so that kind of kicked me off on that management path. Hit a point of wanting to kind of come back home to the East Coast, moved back to Florida, spent some time with AOA, spent a good bit of time out as a free agent. And kind of when I decided I missed people and getting to have a kind of established team, kind of serendipitously was having that conversation with Dan Moali, our VP, and he said, well, funny you should say that. We need someone just like you, and you should come join our team. And Matt and I kind of came on board right around the same time. And of course, in my I miss people and working with teams, 2 months later, COVID hit, and so it was back to work from home. But we still talk every day, and we're on Teams, and we're doing this kind of video call thing. And so I've been with the Scenario team a little over a year now, and it's been a fun transition into Fab, which has been new for me, but still a lot of the creative management and working with teams and our clients. And so that is the very, very condensed there to here story for me.
Very cool. How about Matt? You go next.
Yeah, sure. So I stumbled into themed entertainment. Since 2008, I've been part of this industry, and the people that I talked to, people like Arielle, she knew this was an industry. She knew it existed. So many designers and others in this industry kind of think back to the original sort of WED enterprises and say, that's what I want to do. And they know, the names of all of the people who've contributed over the years, the Disney legends who are with us and not. And I didn't know any of that. I knew Walt Disney, and I, as a young kid, wanted to be an animator. So I had a lot of animation, cell books and things like that. So I would kind of like draw and used to think one day I'm going to, make movies because I'll be drawing them. So I sketched, in my early days, but then found that, what I was really good at was just getting on stage and being in front of people and singing and that sort of thing. So theater. And so many of us also kind of take a theater track to eventually land in themed entertainment. I was just on the performance side. So long story short, I joined a band, went to New York, we got a production deal, and everything kind of went sideways around the time Napster happened, early 2000s. So I was sort of left not knowing, what I was going to do with my life. I was kind of hustling, working multiple jobs. I made a decision, though, that I was going to learn how to be an audio engineer because I had seen from the ISO booth as a vocalist, like singing and seeing the engineers kind of manipulating faders and stuff on the other side. But I was kind of done with the music industry at that time. So I decided specifically I wanted to go work for Lucasfilm, Skywalker Ranch at Skywalker Sound and be an audio post-production engineer, which is exactly what I did. I went to school, learned how to be an audio engineer, got my degree, stuck around for the entertainment business bachelor's program, and then moved out to San Francisco. Got the interview, got the job, worked on 27 movies, including WALL-E and Ratatouille and a lot of our favorite now Disney properties. Back then it was just Pixar before the acquisition. And in 2008, had an opportunity to come down to Orlando from Marin County, California, where I was, and get involved in the Harry Potter project with Technomedia. Technomedia being an audiovisual design integration firm with a lot of background foundation in film, which is kind of interesting, that transition for them into spaces like Universal and doing the audio mixes and so many other things. But that's where I landed. And as a project coordinator out in the field, working with all of those different, those different companies that were out there, you see the GCs, the architects, the audiovisual, the ride vendors and all that, and they're all working together. So for me, it was an experience that just exploded my very 2D workflow, which is sitting with faders and computers and in front of a screen, which is cool, but it just immediately became this 4D just exploded experience in storytelling, and I just got hooked. And after a few years on the project coordination, project management track for Technomedia, I went over to Oceaneering as my next stop, and I was there for 6 years as their head of creative services. And it was there that I kind of made the jump from project lead to business development and marketing, and basically brand storytelling. And I did that by understanding who the players were, both the people and the companies. And the TEA obviously gave me the mixers and the events and things like that to do it, and also having really great leadership at Oceaneering who sort of saw value in, hey Matt, you're pretty good with people and you're pretty good at sort of getting out there, and maybe you could help us spread the word. So that's what I did, and that's how I got into business development. I moved from Oceaneering on to Universal Creative, where Kathy and I worked for a brief stint on a project that I cannot talk about. And it was there that I was liaising between an IP and the art team, or the design team that was developing sort of all the assets and getting those approvals. That was my whole gig. And as soon as that was done, they asked me if I wanted to move abroad. I said, no, thank you. And I went to go work for a design firm called Hotop out of Seattle. And I was based here in Orlando. I opened their Orlando location at the time, got them, connected with the players in the themed entertainment space, because that was the direction they wanted to go. For 3 years, did that. Incredible team, incredible growth there. And then I moved over to Scenario because, as Arielle said, Dan Moali had come on board as the vice president of North American operations at Scenario. And he said, look, I need somebody with really, a lot of energy and who has great relationships with design and architecture and others to, kind of expand widen the net of business opportunities that we as Scenario could sink our teeth into. So that was last January, and I've been here ever since, and it's been fantastic.
Very cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Going from music into themed entertainment, that's super awesome.
Totally non-linear, completely by accident. We'll be here.
How about you, Don?
I took a circuitous route to end up in themed entertainment. I started in film and television industry on the West Coast, specializing in motion capture animation, doing film and television work. And about 24 years ago, I was finishing up a gig, and somebody came to me and said, hey, we know you don't do this, but how would you feel about integrating technology for a theme park? And I said, I don't really know what that means, but sure, let's do it. So I went to a couple interviews and realized that this was a melding of theater, which I had a background in, and the technology that I'd been working with. And I said, yeah, I think this would be great. And they thought so too. And I ended up on contract to Imagineering for a little while. And I did that. And from there, I worked for BRC for a couple years, and on the design side of the business as a fabrication manager for them. And then I went to a fabricator for a time when we were doing museums, and we're mainly a museum. We're a design build museum company, and I was with them for several years. And then somebody came knocking and said, have you thought about Orlando? And I'd been spending a lot of time in Orlando for different projects over the years. I hadn't thought about living here, but the company that came knocking said, hey, why don't we give this a try? And so I said, yeah, let's do it. So I picked up my family and came out here and spent about 10 years with that fabricator here in Orlando. And I transitioned from, over the time, I became a project manager and then a project director, and that eventually led me to running the shop. And the shop ended up really wasn't something I had thought about when I was approached to do it, but it ended up being a great melding of taking this project management experience and taking the theater background experience and just the general know-how on how to build and sort of do things, and putting them all into one cup. And I kind of shifted over to production management, and that's where I've been for quite a while now. So it's been a lot of fun, and I wouldn't change the path for anything. So that's really about it.
It's so exciting. Like I love hearing people's paths and like how little seemingly adjacent moves brought them to where they are now. It's cool because we never know what next thing is going to take us to something amazing. Like Scenario. Speaking of Scenario, can you tell us a little bit more about like the company? Because
Absolutely.
like y'all are amazing, and if there's y'all three amazing people.
Sure. Well, I mean, while we're pulling up the presentation, I'll just say that we have a good group here because Don and Arielle and I all, while we come from different backgrounds and everything, we also have very different but complementary skill sets. Essentially, essentially, I'm looking for business relationships, opportunities in a variety of industries. Theme parks included, of course, but any guest experience industry really where Scenario can fit. So Scenario is a scenic firm. And while I'm looking for those opportunities and relationships, Arielle, a lot of times, is kind of my first line of defense or my first phone call where I kind of say, hey, look, I need to illustrate to a client like exactly how we can help, and getting her to join me on a call to explain what design assist means, because Scenario does not do blue sky. We do not do concept development. That's not something like, concepting at its core belongs to a design firm, we believe. And so what we're interested in doing from a design standpoint is assisting with the design development. So typically we get involved at a comfortable concept plus, meaning 25% SD, sometimes slightly before, but typically we're the ones who are defining how things get built. A lot of times we have to grab the feet of the creatives and plant their feet firmly on the ground and say, you can't build it the way that you've just designed it, but it's pretty. So, and then of course, when it gets time to, turn on a project, then Don comes in with his team, and speaking strictly, of course, for Orlando. We'll get to locations of Scenario in just a little bit, but Don will sort of guide the fabrication process and kind of crack the whip on the shop and make sure that everything is copacetic and gets done on time. So Scenario, we say we build worlds storytellers imagine. So hopefully I did a good job explaining that. The storytellers are the design firms that are out there. They are our client, and we're grateful for them because they're the ones who give us, the beautiful scenic environments, characters, figures, and things that we produce. They feed us that. So we do scenic, show set, theme paint, figures, rock work, environments, and other things as well. Moving to the next slide here. This will show you kind of a pretty picture of one of the projects that we've completed in the past, and it's just this is a nice summation of what an interior show set looks like, right? It's the inside of basically a boat dock. There you go. That's what we do. Obviously, you have a lot of other skill sets that feed into this: the audio, visual, the lighting, the effects, fog, and other things. And those are all our partners in the industry. We do a lot of integration of those kinds of things in our shops, both in Orlando, LA, and overseas in Asia. The next slide is kind of just a very brief about us. So Scenario was purchased by Cockrum. Now, Scenario has been around since 2015, doing various projects. And Cockrum is a construction firm, so a GC based in Australia. They acquired Scenario years ago, and then Kajima Corporation, one of the world's largest development general contractors, purchased Cockrum and thus Scenario. So we like to say we have a very rich uncle, which makes the pandemic, that much nicer to get through. But they're a terrific group to work for. We have the full support of continuing to work in themed entertainment and adjacent industries that have guest experience related. We say we are an international turnkey show contractor, meaning that we can get involved at a very early stage to influence the construction management, vendor management, et cetera, when needed. We also, are happy to receive RFPs for scenic and rock work scope. So we get work in a variety of ways. But at the time that this presentation was developed, we've delivered over 30 attractions in the world, 20 in the U.S. and 12 in Asia. Obviously, everyone's reading along here, but rockwork, show set, show action equipment, animated IP figures, construction management, and project management. That's CMPM. One of the benefits of being a Kajima company is that we have the ability, unlike so many other firms out there, to offer a bonding capacity in excess of $100 million per project. And that comes in handy more often than you think. We have 6 primary locations: Los Angeles, Orlando. I'll pause there for a second. Orlando and Los Angeles each have basically a full complement of technical design staff. Here in Orlando, it's led by Arielle. And in California, it's led by Sarah Sowell. We have full operations, full complement of machinery and staff that basically contribute to the production of these projects. Roughly 100,000 square feet in each location. So we've got a huge footprint on both coasts to serve our clients and everywhere in between. And then you see kind of a breakout here of percentages. The show set is typically where most of our work comes from. We are known for our rock work. We have a proprietary rock work technique that we implement. It's a chip and tab technique, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Don can really speak to the benefits of that and how it's done. And then other elements that we produce are show action, show effects, IP figures, and the management aspect as well. I'm gonna pause there. There are more slides, but I feel like, Kelly, you're about to burst.
Okay, I've never heard the term bonding capacity, like, ever. I've never heard of it, because I'm a little baby in this industry.
Sure.
So everything is bright and new and shiny to me.
Mm-hmm. So having $100 million bonding capacity allows us to basically play in a space with a developer that or an owner. Typically a project comes with a lot of risk, and when you can mitigate that risk by offering essentially an insurance plan, understand? So that's that's the easy way, I think, of explaining that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's oh gosh, it's so crazy because like when we showed the shot of like the inside the boathouse, right? Like I see the parts that go into that, but then on the presentation where you showed like all the different areas that y'all handle, I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Thanks.
Um, I
Yeah,
love
actually,
organization. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it.
that's why we have awesome project managers out there, and we lean on them very heavily. So
Yeah.
there's more to the slides if you'd like to continue. We have some
Oh
more
yeah.
images in there as well. So this is a quick rundown of our services and expertise. And in bold, you'll just see very simply kind of, what it all rolls up into in terms of categories, but design and pre-construction, again, Arielle's forte. And then we have theme construction and in-house production capabilities. And each one of those really speaks to what Don and his team offers. And again, we have similar well, actually identical roles in each of our shops. So depending geographically where your project is or where your client is, we're able to support a project from ideation stage through commissioning.
Yeah.
So under design and pre-construction, we talked a little bit about this. While it says concept development, I just want to be very clear. Again, not blue sky. We don't do concepts. What that means is we develop concepts that are done by others. And design firms, designers will come to us and say, this is what it is. It's going to be purple and pink and beautiful and fluffy. And we say, okay, how are we going to build it? Well, we have it in our heads and we say, okay, great. Well, that artistic sort of art direction or creative direction will inform us as to how to develop what eventually will become, a full, detailed package with call outs, dimensions, materials, etc. And then we do BIM support and management as well. That's becoming a really huge part of our process in the design phase. Feasibility, constructability, obviously every project needs that. Some clients can do that in-house, others cannot, and we can support if and when needed. Full project scheduling, design pre-construction, on into theme construction. I'm skipping through here, but quite a lot of capability. Arielle, did you want to comment a little bit about any of the design pre-construction stuff? And Don, you should speak to the production capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a design side, you've covered it at a high level. It's a lot of us taking that, SD plus DD level package, which, as you mentioned, is often pretty pictures that may or may not have a solid grounding in reality. And working with the client to figure out, okay, if this is what you want, how do we get you there? A lot of times we're that final mile, from a design existing only on a page to actually becoming real. And it's where a lot of the rubber meets the road in terms of having to figure out how do we make this thing, not just how do you build it, because with time and money not being limitations, you can build just about anything. Though that's not a world we exist in. Budget and timelines are two of our biggest constraints. And so it then turns into, okay, how do we build this to meet your budget, but still meet your creative intent? And so that's where my team is heavily involved in the, okay, we're going to make it out of this, and it's going to, okay, it needs to support this other thing. So does it have a wood frame or a steel frame? And how does it have to integrate with other show elements? Is there an LED screen by another vendor that has to be involved? Do we have their models? Are we spitballing here? It's heavy integration and coordination with our partners, with our clients, and then a lot of time spent in 3D modeling software. So my team works primarily in Inventor. We are moving company-wide to using Inventor for a lot of our modeling, and then that next step of integration into BIM and Revit, and working with our client-provided models, running all the clash detection. Again, it's that heavily technical side of the realities of a project, and not just pretty pictures that don't have to actually interface and integrate with anything. So, and then, I work a lot very closely with Don and his team and the production team to make sure that the things my team is drawing still fit into that. Okay, is this actually real? Can we build this in the shop? Does this attachment actually work? Can we get to it? Or is it in a box that, like, cool, that bolt's there on a piece of paper, but how does a human in the shop who has to assemble this actually get to that bolt? So Don, I'll kind of hand it off to you from there.
Sure. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking how closely the two of us work together, production and design hand in hand, because we take these things that are an image and we need to figure out how to put it together. And we need to put it together with materials that are sustainable and that's going to have a life cycle that's going to meet the client's needs. And there's so much that integrates with it that becomes part of that process that it's more than just, hey, we're taking some steel and we're welding it together and we're applying something to it. There's that part of it where, we need to look back to the other people that we're working with so closely, like the design team, to get those answers that, this is a well thought out and pulled forward. So when we get to the floor and we get to putting that piece of paper in front of the craftsmen and the artisans, that they've got a plan that is well thought out and executed and followable. And that is really the big challenge in getting this stuff to the floor. Once we've got to the floor, we've got all sorts of tools at our disposal to make the different things in the way that we need to do it. We've got CNC routers, we have table saws, we've got welding units. So, like a typical production facility, we're going to have a paint department, and that paint department's going to do everything from scenic paint to automotive paints for us. We'll have a full complement welding department, and they'll be able, they've got the ability to roll materials, weld and build frames, put together the nuts and bolts of the inside of what it is that we're supporting. And then we've got a millwork and carpentry department. The millwork and carpentry department is where the rubber meets the road a lot of the time, because these guys that work in this department are experts in a lot of different materials. You just can't say, hey, he's a carpenter, he works in wood. He works in wood, he integrates with fiberglass, acrylics, plastics, cast plastics, all those sort of things to make something look like what it's envisioned to be. And a lot of time we've got to think about how we do that and how many different materials that we're using to put that together to get that final image. So that's really the fun part of it for us, and where it really kind of all comes together is in that department, and then the finishes is what makes it sing. So
our paint department is so insanely talented. I mean, all of them are, but that's always like, I'll walk out and I'll see something that's in progress and built. And then I walk back out a few days later and it's got paint on. It's like, wait. I know what that's made out of. I know how that's built. Looks like something completely different. Yeah. Like a lot of what they do, I think, is just witchcraft. But yeah, I mean, at one point, I talk to our head of carpentry more than any other shop lead. Like,
yeah,
he and I are on the phone with each other or out in the shop together almost daily, probably, I would say. And I think that's part of what makes the shop life, right, of us being in fabrication and having the design team on site really special, is any of our designers can just walk out on the floor and work with the shop to, okay, we need to problem solve this, or we've got a lesson learned from this. Let's talk about it in the moment. It's live feedback, it's live collaboration. And that's something I think that's really unique to a fabrication shop as opposed to being in more traditional design. That for me was a big learning curve, because I come out of very traditional design, right? It is, we draw it, we make the pretty picture, we hand it off. As a manager, sure, I was overseeing some fabricators, but it was mostly, does it look like the picture? As opposed to, in the 14, 15 months that I've been with the team here, it's getting into those conversations of the nitty gritty of, okay, this is going to be some kind of MDF. Is it Medite or is it Xterra? And, I feel like when I started, I would have gone, those are not words I know. Those are not convinced you're speaking English to me, and now I can, join in those conversations with our team and learning so much from Don and the shop team as far as that goes, of really the intricacies of what doesn't make something good, but what makes it great. And that's going to last, and that's going to stand the test of time and meet our client expectations and stand up to guest abuse and all of the crazy things that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Arielle, coming from a design background and everything, doing concepts and all of the amazing projects that you've worked on, to come here, it must be a real level up, to understanding, what the material call outs. Like you said, you see something that is entirely made of, wood. You come back the next day, it's painted and treated, and it looks metal, and you're like, holy cow, how did that happen? So I imagine as a designer, that's cool. It's cool for me to walk the floor every so often too, and see that stuff.
Yeah, I think every designer, whether you actually go work for a fabricator or not, you are only going to be a stronger designer for understanding how things get built. I was lucky to get that foundation early in my career, doing a lot of millwork design and working. I had a wonderful millwork vendor who would spend time with me to explain to me why my drawings would or wouldn't work and ways to improve them. And the earlier you can find a mentor or a partner like that in your career, the better designer it's going to make you, because it's often incredibly frustrating to be on the fabricator end and get something that you then have to break the news to the client of, this isn't quite going to work, and we can make it work. We can get there, but we need to work together, as opposed to getting a design that's already been thought through a little bit, where they've thought through the methodology and the order of operations and how do we get from not just A to B, but A to F and A to Z and all the steps in between.
Yeah, it's I think there's a great analogy. We have to say a lot in our process, yes, and, or yes, but.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that we're always saying yes. How can we move the process on, and how can we further what it is that the client wants to see and what it is that they're looking for?
Yeah, and that's key, Don. I want to just say that we are the subject matter experts when it comes to, beginning with the end in mind. What does it need to do? What does it need to withstand? How does it need to look? We're the ones that can answer the how.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe if we pull the presentation back up, that would be great. The next slide talks a little bit. It's funny because the text at the bottom does not actually match the image, but the image is beautiful, and it's work that we completed. So, a good example of sometimes is a show set design, needs very little in terms of original, custom scenic. A lot of what you see here is, just found objects. And we can get creative with the budgetary constraints of a project by going that route when applicable. Of course, if these scrolls are going to be touched and climbed on by kids, then they probably need to be made out of something pretty sturdy. But they can be made to look like old paper scrolls, and that's kind of the fun part of what we do. At the bottom, though, the copy, if it's not too small for anyone to read, it basically references a Lionsgate Entertainment World project over in Zhuhai, China, that was completed by our group over in Asia, by Tom Stapleton and Stephen Rambusik and their teams over there. Basically, a very creative approach to work back then. The BIM technology came in handy, working in basically an open space with other vendors to manage the project in real time. Along with real-time cost estimating. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of how clients prefer to work. It may be something that they're not even aware of, but we'd love to be able to have conversations like that whenever possible. But the Lionsgate Entertainment World project was certainly a first, and the first of many in terms of the BIM. And now Dave Hall, who's tuned in, is letting everyone know that, hey, BIM, that's Dave Hall, everyone. So there you go, Dave. You get a little shout out. Yeah, I don't know, Arielle, if you have any more to add on the BIM conversation.
I mean, it varies project to project, right? I think, as you mentioned earlier, it's something we're seeing be an increasingly, hey Dave, an increasingly, large component of projects, because why wouldn't we want to use it? If you can visualize a space and see your clash detection and all of the things you're going to want to work around in 3D ahead of time, why wouldn't you? And once upon a time, that cost was astronomical. It is becoming lower because more and more people are using Revit. A lot of people um, think of Revit as BIM. BIM overall is building information modeling. It is our everything that's in the space. And so BIM is not just Revit, it's Navisworks, it's BIM 360, it's all these tools that tell us how does all this info in the building come together and play together. So we might have a model from our MEP engineer, we might have a model from the architect, we might have other show models from other vendors, fire protection, plumbing, everything that's in a building. And then two, it's smart. So as opposed to, let's say, if I was working in 2D CAD and I changed a wall from 10 feet long, in my plan that was 12 feet long, now I have to go find it in all my elevations and change it everywhere else. If I change that 10-foot wall to a 12-foot wall or vice versa in any kind of 3D software like Revit, it's going to reflect everywhere else in the model. And it's also going to tell me oh, hey, you just hit something. Here's all the problems you're going to cause by doing that. Or, we can put something in and figure out if it's a little bit too tall, or if we've got a pit in the floor that one of our elements has to sit in, we can figure out if that base plate fits in that pit or not. If the concrete of the slab is thick enough for our embeds. There's so many things that we can figure out before we ever get to the field. And then that model can also go into the field and follow us to inform our installers, to inform the subs, everyone else in the space. Everyone is constantly relying on this model and working together. It can do things like takeoffs and tell us how many square footage of something we need in a very quick and easy way. It's great for cost estimating. It's not just your architectural or show drawings on a page. It is all of the information of the project in one space.
And I just realized I used an acronym without defining it. So BIM, B-I-M, building, is it building integration?
Information.
Building information modeling. Yeah. So just a
management, usually. Yeah. It drives me nuts because BIM has been a term in the industry for a long time. And you see it as information, you see it as integration, you see it as modeling, you see it as management. So it kind of becomes what is most used. And I will say the one I see used the most is building information management, but I have seen it. And I think it's just one of those people who are like, I think I know what that stands for, and I'm going to run with it. And now all of a sudden it's all over the place. And so there's some disagreement about the actual acronym, which makes me a little crazy.
I've seen over the years us go from 2D to 3D and into BIM. And it really has changed the way that we build. Because so many of the problems are figured out in the design world on the computer screen, anywhere from the structural to all the MEP. And we know how that stuff's going to interact with the scenery before the scenery ends up in the field. And that's so much different than what it was when I first started. We had an idea, but it was all in a 2D world. And basically you did a lot of integration once you got to the field, and we don't see that anymore. A lot of it's figured out on the computer in the 3D space, and that's exciting change over the years. And Scenario just happens to be really good at it, so it makes my job easier.
So Don, would you say having the BIM models has kind of improved or allowed for production to be easier? How would you describe how that process, just a little bit more in depth, how that process has changed, adjusted, different tools somebody may need to learn, or just kind of the evolution of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that we get now that we didn't used to really receive in our design packages is we get exploded isometrics. We actually see the pieces and how something goes together layer by layer, and that is such a strong piece of information for the shop floor, because it allows them to envision the different layers of the product and how it's being assembled. And it's really changed over the years, and I envision the future where we bring BIM onto the shop floor and allow it to manage process and get the everyday artisans involved with that process. And it can do everything from tracking materials and helping us use it in work orders to say, hey, here's step 1, 2, 3, and 4 to manage our process, and really give us capabilities over quality control that didn't exist or existed in different programs in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it brings that custom piece of paper, that drawing, into our world and allows us to manage from it. So.
And in just how the software tools integrate together, I mean, you look at something like we're modeling an inventor, where if I go through and I use a bunch of tech screws to attach something to a wall, and then I put a bill of materials on the page, and it knows, and it says, okay, you've got 12 of this kind of tech screw in here. That information can then be exported into BIM. And BIM 360 has a whole, as Don mentioned, kind of background where it can track all of that and all of our inventories and parts lists and everything is. And then if I change something on a page, that bill of materials is smart, it's linked to the model, it's going to update. So there's a lot of efficiencies in these tools now that just simply didn't exist even 5 years ago, really.
Yeah, so, on this slide, you're seeing everything from design development, the BIM, you're getting little screenshots, essentially just quick visuals on the type of work that we do. And hopefully that, along with the conversation we're having, has been able to illustrate visually, kind of what we're talking about and what Scenario offers. On the next slide, you'll see inside one of our facilities, and it kind of calls out the various areas, including, we have a sculpting area, molding, carpentry, assembly space, pack and crate, scenic paint, welding, GRP and CNC, and tools and storage. So, we've pretty well divvied out in each warehouse and facility space, how these are arranged. And Don, if you have anything to add on, the kind of folks that work day to day in these facilities.
Yeah, it'd be great. A lot of the people come out of a very artistic background. You'd be surprised how many of them went to art school and have bachelor's and master's in theater as artists, and they really are artisans. You've got somebody that's got the capability to sculpt in clay and foam, really bring that piece to life. It's interesting background that everyone brings. Let's say a guy in the weld department. Yes, he's a welder, but he's also a custom fabricator. And he really understands bringing all of the different tools to deliver the final product. And not only does the welder, at one point build a structural frame, he may then take that structural frame and integrate the fiberglass to it. So somebody just doesn't stay in one little area. They all kind of move around and all become part of the bigger picture across the entire shop. So.
Very cool. So, in terms of people who come into the shop, I know that we've spoken about a lot of people studying design, interior design, production design.
Sure.
Where do you see other people coming into if they want to come in and start building and designing and fabricating? Like, what sorts of backgrounds do come in besides theater as well? Just as an understanding for some of our viewers as well, who may be considering, hey, this is really cool. I would love to go in and start, doing fabrication.
Yeah, so those people come from a lot of different backgrounds. People come from trade schools, that may be specific to welding or carpentry or millwork. Generally, sculptors and people like that do have a fine arts background, and they have a degree that they come with. They went to school specifically and studied sculpture and fine art. A lot of the people that we've got that work in the molding facility or the FRP facilities, a lot of the time they just specialize. They've kind of come in and said, hey, I want to learn how to be a fiberglass person. So they jump in and become part of that process. They may come out of boat manufacturing facilities. They may come out of other sort of backgrounds, but we bring them in and teach them specifically how it is that we're doing the work that we're doing. So it comes from a lot of different ways. We do get people, as I mentioned earlier, that have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and they specifically want to build. It's not unusual to get somebody in who's got a bachelor's degree and they're a carpenter, and really we see less and less of somebody starting on the bottom and coming up. A lot of people come with specific skills and want to work in this industry now. But it really just depends on the person and their experience. Somebody who's been a carpenter for 20 years obviously doesn't need a degree. They have learned through experience how it is that the stuff goes together, and it's that background of just having been there and done it, which is so important. That can't be traded. And a lot of the time with people when they want to get started in a shop, I say to them, start in theater. Find what it is that moves you. Is it the painting? Is it the building of the product? Is it the assembly of the product? And you'd be surprised how often that little bit of guidance will help somebody learn what it is that they want to continue moving forward with. So I always say, and I always direct people to the theater as a great learning point and background, because you're going to learn something about everything, and you're going to get a chance to put your hands on a lot of different things. So.
Don, I asked this because I genuinely don't know, because I joined so close to before COVID.
Yeah.
In the same way that we talk about, bringing on interns for design, do we ever bring apprentices into the shop?
Yeah, we do. We have done that in the past. It really depends on how busy we are at any given time. But we do have people that do say, hey, I understand that I want to be a scenic painter now, and here's my background. And they show us a portfolio of what they've done. And let's say they haven't gone to school specifically. That person can come in and start learning from the ground up what it means to be a scenic artist. Generally, they would start with a piece of sandpaper in their hand and learn how to properly sand, how to do body work, how to lay on a layer of paint. And that's kind of, the process that some people come in. Some people have the skill sets. Other people, they develop them from the ground up.
Do y'all? I'm so curious. Do y'all do 3D printing too? Like, if one of your clients like wants something specific, instead of necessarily having to build it, do you just like?
Yeah, we do 3D printing. We don't have a 3D printer in our shop. We just don't have enough of a call out for it. So we will take a 3D piece that has been designed and take it to a printer and have them print it. Generally, that gets us 90 to 95% of the way there. And then we have our sculptor come in and tighten back up what it is that was kind of missed in the digital world to bring it to life, if you will. And that's the same with our 3D capabilities on our milling machines. We'll sculpt the character out of foam and then assemble it. And then we've got that sculptor that comes in and just adds that final 10% that really brings it to life.
Yeah, and one other thing is, 3D printing is one of those things where, sure, everybody is talking about 3D printing right now. Certainly, if we get a project in that justifies purchasing a 3D printer, we'll do it. A lot of times we find efficiency in, a hand carving situation, and certainly we can, coordinate a 3D printer if and when needed. But every project is different. Every client is different. And, technology for the sake of technology is not the answer. It's not a one size fits all, I don't think, at all. So on the slide here, you'll see quite a bit of different types of work that we've done, fabrication facilities, or capabilities rather. Everything from scale models, artificial foliage, to static and animated figures, and signs and illustration on the far right. That cool little pipe sign there, that's actually a very large, but sometimes probably not broadcast enough part of our business. Murals, again, what sets us apart is the artisanship that Don brought up, the craftsmanship and artisanship. If you walk into our facility, you're going to see a lot of, heavy machinery, and, but really what makes us different and special and better are our people, our artists, sculptors, painters. These are the ones that actually are, bringing the magic to life off the page into the experience for people. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. And obviously looking for any questions from people who are viewing live. This is just a quick piece on integrated project delivery. Another beautiful photo of, here's a good example of just a architectural specialty finishes inside of Lionsgate Entertainment World. But literally everything you see here, with the exception of the off-the-shelf, seats, were created by and installed by Scenario. So even at this level, we're able to offer this kind of work. So this lends itself to high-end bars, restaurants, different places like that. So any comments here, Dawn or Arielle?
I just think it's a great point to emphasize. So many people, when they think of scenic fabrication, think of the really highly themed rockwork forward carved TCP, something that looks like a pirate ship, or that looks like a super themed tiki bar, or you name it. It can apply to more traditional architecture as well, like you see here.
Yeah. And again, just because it looks like something doesn't mean it's made out of something. And, the reason for that is, things like durability, certainly cost. We can build marble pillars for you, but they'll be made of wood. Just, so you know. So,
My friends laugh when they go to theme parks with me because I just walk around knocking on everything.
Yeah, you're like,
it comes from being an interior designer too. I'm constantly like, what is this actually made out of? But that's something we have to consider too, because a guest is going to do that. And if you knock on something that's supposed to be solid wood and it sounds hollow, that's another thing to consider.
That's right.
Yeah, it's funny going to theme parks because I try to enjoy it, but it turns into work because I do try to figure out how everything was built and what material it was done out of and what the project cycle was to get it all together. So that's it's funny that you walk around knocking on things because I do exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So this slide talks about our management services. You see here, 6 categories: 4D schedule, scheduling, program support, building authority coordination, construction management, program management, value engineering and estimating, and vendor management. So all of those sort of come into play in terms of outside of scenic show action, architectural specialty finishes, and the physical things that we are building. We're also offering these services to manage projects. So full project scheduling, value engineering and estimating is a biggie. I mean, we'll go through a lot of times a real-time estimating effort on a project that is in its early stages of development and even concepting. There have been cases where, our team has sat basically in an estimating seat / construction management seat alongside an architect, an engineer, and the creative and the IP in some cases, to in real time, design a space. And you're basically, when you think about like an overall, call it, 100,000 square feet, and you're starting to dedicate, well, this is going to be the restaurant, and this is going to be, this one gaming area, this is going to be this other maze escape room thingy. Obviously I'm designing an FEC for hypothetical purposes. But, even in those scenarios, where the design is not there yet, we're still able to add value to the, overall project by looking at, running these different sort of what if scenarios of, if we do this, then XYZ. So we're able to offer a really in-depth, management to every project, including vendor management, which is supporting the, preparing the RFP, supporting the RFP process, and then even beyond that, managing the vendors through the execution and commissioning of a project. Absolutely. So we'll jump to the next slide since you're so quiet. Here, now these guys are doing some major mythological battle. This is a cool image of a couple of static figures that are guarding the entryway to an attraction at Lions Gate, Zhuhai. And, again, just a great quote there from Dan Moali, we mentioned earlier in this talk, the VP of US, and we all work for Dan. Yeah, we're in the business of, while we're in the business of scenic fabrication, we're also in the business of selling trust. We've been doing this for a very long time. As individuals and as a company, we all play really well together in the sandbox. And it's a very small birdbath, this industry. And we believe that relationships lead the way to successful projects and more projects. So let's go to the next. Our installation capability should be pretty straightforward here as well. Install supervision and management, installation labor, touch-up, tie-in, in-field art direction, SAT and commissioning. SAT, of course, site acceptance testing, and safety management. All very important tropes of the scenario mindset on projects. And into the next slide. This is actually a really cool piece, and anyone out there who would like a tour of Scenario, we would be happy, of course, post-pandemic when it's safe and everything, to come out and see these kinds of. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Yeah, see
I'm
these.
just laughing at
Oh,
Kelly pointing to herself.
you were saying I can't hear you. Yeah, so we have these great examples of scenic work that that we've put on display as demonstrations of the different types of work. And what you see here is in our Orlando shop, and we have more that we can certainly show you under NDA and in safer circumstances. We have tours available also in Los Angeles. Out there, we're based in San Fernando, and again, just a really great team and really great things to sort of showcase for you that are not proprietary to our very valuable clients.
So would we be able to take a little step back, because we glossed over install, and that's always a very interesting and involved process. And I wanted to know if you guys would be able to speak on that a little bit, because it's different than what we've been able to discuss before.
Yeah.
Sure.
Matt, you want to grab this one, or you want me to?
I think you should. I've been eating up all the airtime. Go.
Okay. So for installation, it's really its own discipline. We've got install superintendents and install people. Some of them do move back and forth from the shop to the field, but it's almost a different type of person that likes to do the field work versus in the shop work. And the superintendents are really very strong problem solvers and people who think on their feet. And a lot of the field installation people are multi-talented. They've got the ability to do carpentry. They've got the ability to weld. They've got the ability to even paint. This is where our all-around people really shine. And that really is such a specific discipline, because they've got to figure out how to lift that heavy piece of steel up into place, and how to get it onto the building, and how to do it safely. And it's one thing for us to move something around in a very controlled shop environment. It's another for somebody to take that piece, take it off of a truck in the middle of a parking lot, fly it up a couple stories into the side of a building, and then distribute it into the space, and figure out how they're going to get it onto the wall on that specific spot where there's a plate sitting there for it. And these guys and women, because we have both in that field, are real problem solvers. I said that earlier, but they are the people that really find their way to saying, absolutely, we can do this. And without them, none of the work that we do in the shop, none of the work that gets done in design would find its final sort of spot, So the install people are very, very important part of the process. And they manage very large crews, a lot of different disciplines, and they're really some of the best managers in the field. So we're really lucky to have good superintendents.
So in the process of bringing something to life, so we saw the two sculptures that were outside beforehand. How does that process end up coming to be? Is that like, all right, so we're going to build the individual pieces and bring them in individually, or are we going to fly this in? When does that planning end up happening? Or is it one of those things where you plan for it and it never goes to plan, and you have to go and be like, all right, so we have to hire a crane and have it lifted up and over? How is that planning process done? Is that done with Arielle? Is that done with your project manager? Just kind of an insight into that process.
Sure. That really starts in design. And it really starts with understanding how big the piece is. Can we get it into a truck? How are we going to ship it from point A to point B? And the design team has to think about those parameters early on in the process, and they really work very closely with the project management and understanding what the limitations of the site are, because one job may be, let's say we're building something and it has to go overseas. Well, that's a different size container than putting it on the back of a flatbed truck and taking it around the corner, so they have to design the pieces to be broken up in a way that we can put them back together in the field and minimize the amount of work, the amount of patching and repainting, and the way that it gets assembled. We want to spend as few hours as possible doing that. So it really starts in design, continues through production, because there are times that, we may be moving something around on the shop floor and we'll go, you know what, it would be really nice if we had X to help us move this, whether it's a pick point or a piece of steel somewhere that we can wrap a sling around to be able to move that. And we work very closely with design. We go back to design and say, here is the parameter that we need. Can you give us the engineering guidelines and tell us what it is that we need to weld into position or build into position to be able to lift up this 5,000 pounds? It's an integrated process all the way through. The project management will really work with the field people to figure out their parameters inside the field. So once it's out of the shop, that really becomes a project management and field management part of the process. So that becomes part of project management, very heavy again. And the project managers work with us through the production process hand in hand. So they're always looking at the same set of parameters. I hope that explains it.
The PM is probably the person I work with most closely every single day on a project is the constant back and forth with the PM. And what Don mentioned was a great example. We'll have times where, okay, we designed it to fit on a truck. We designed it to fit on the site. We thought about all the things and we didn't think about them having to move it. So we had a piece for a project recently in the shop that we took all those things into account, but when they went to move it back and forth in the shop and take it from point A to point B, we were getting really bad flexing and deflection. And so we then had to come up with a design solution that had nothing to do with the final install, but strictly how we were able to handle the piece safely for our crew in our shop, and having to come up with some engineering solutions that let us move that around and ship it without it deflecting, without it hurting anyone, And I'm working with the shop right now on, hey, we need to add some pick points to something so that we can actually lift this up and install it. We've had things that we thought would fit in a truck, and we've had to go back and reconsider how they come apart and get shipped across the country and then get installed. It's never, hey, we've designed this and now here the shop, it's yours. And, no plan survives first contact, right? So it's a lot of cyclical, constant feedback and talking to each other and problem solving as the process goes. It's certainly not design's done. Now it's the shop's turn. There's a lot of that continual feedback.
This is now my favorite, my favorite quote so far. No plan survives first contact. And I'm like,
I can't even take credit for that. I had an old project site, and that was someone had printed it out and stuck it above the printer because that was the room everyone had to come in and out of. And every now and then you'd be in a particularly challenging part of the project, and you walk in and just kind of like death glare and shake,
Regardless,
but it's true.
Regardless, though, now Arielle, we're making you a T-shirt. So
please,
no
or a mug. I think I need it on a mug so I can just silently sip and glare without having to.
That's a good one. Good catch, Kelly. You had to mute. You're laughing.
I know. Oh my gosh.
We are almost through the deck. I think there's one more slide in there, so I don't know if we can pull that one back up. So, so vertical assets, referring, of course, to all of our amazing locations around the globe. Here you see, our stacked on top of each other, of course, in the U.S., our Los Angeles and our Orlando facilities. Hong Kong, we have a design and project management office there, and that's where our Tom Stapleton and Stephen Rambusik are there. Stephen is our director of design globally, and then Tom runs the Asian operations. Fantastic people. Manila, we have our design center there. The Zhuhai production facility, roughly 7,200 square meters, and then Bangkok, Thailand, another 5,500 square meter facility. So just, with this kind of representation, if you were to look at it on a map, you really get the sense that we actually can work 24/7 on projects if and when needed, and there's growth all around, even coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing so much growth. Obviously the Middle East, obviously, in Asia, continuing to boom, in China's, mainland China, as well as in Japan and other places, Vietnam, for example, and, and everywhere in between. We've got partners, collaborative vendors, and everyone sort of standing by in practically every part of the world. So again, my purview is over all global projects, but specifically I'm looking, for projects and partners in the U.S., in North and South America, as well as in Europe. Really, really making a splash over in that area as well, and we're excited about it. So that's kind of the scenario deck. And I think there's one other document, if possible, we could look at. It's the PDF, the one sheet, and this is just something that I'm glad to send out to anybody who wants to reach out. I think the first place people typically go is to a website, and that for us is cockrumscenario.com. You can learn, very basically what we've talked about here in depth today. And if you have any additional questions, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, this is the PDF, and this is a really beautiful piece we had put together, and again, just kind of highlights the fact that we've done these amazing projects, and some of the imagery that you see in this really speaks to some of our Thea Award winners. We've been really proud to contribute to, for example, the development of the the Flintstones down there. So Scenario was hired and won a Thea Award for the Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi project. All of the static figures in that entire space, from Bugs Bunny at the entrance to, Fred Flintstone serving up Bronto burgers in the Flintstones restaurant, and so many others. Marvin the Martian is probably my favorite. And then you see some rock work down there in the sort of second image from the left. It's maybe a little bit small for everyone because it's not in the landscape format, but again, happy to send this out. You can take a peek and just have a general knowledge about who we are and what we do and the types of industries we serve.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about your rock work process? I know that is one of the big installs, the types of installs that your team does, am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, it is. And, I think if you ask an individual from every company in this industry, what do you get pigeonholed as a company? We tend to do that, don't we? We bucketize people and companies into, they need a bucket. And so a lot of times, just because we've done hundreds of thousands of square feet of total thematic award-winning rock work for our clients, we're really proud of it. And before I unleash Dawn into the explanation of how that works, I just want to say that Scenario dubs itself Legends of Rock.
Matt, I think you need to do a quick off-screen, on-screen, and come back in your
Yes,
band wig
yes.
to say that. You have one.
There are photos floating around, and Arielle has them. So.
Arielle, we need to talk afterwards. I need to
No,
see
no,
you.
So Don, rockwork process.
Rock work process. So we do chip and tab rock work. We also do filled fab rock work, but our specialty is chip and tab. And how chip and tab is different than filled fab is that we design the totality of the rock work inside of the computer in a three-dimensional world. And so starting from the beginning, we'll either get a model from the client of what they want that rock work to look like, and that can be a 3D model, or it might be a physical model which we have to scan. And sometimes we will also carve those physical models for the client. But either way, that needs to get into a 3D environment. And once we've got it into a 3D environment, we use software to then put secondary characteristics back into the sculpt to add fidelity to that 3D environment to help tell the story inside of the rock work inside of the 3D environment. So the majority of the art direction is being done in the computer on the front side, so we know what the movement and the look of that rock work is going to look like. And then we've got a proprietary software that then takes a cube, a three-dimensional cube, goes into the face of that rock work and pulls it out, and we have then a slice of that particular piece of rock in that area. Once we have that, our software converts that mesh model, that piece of that mesh model, into a bend file, which then we take to a wire bender. And a wire bender is a big rebar bender, a CNC controlled rebar bender that then bends the shape of the face of that rock work into that piece of wire. And these wires are then a typical chunk of that cube, then has about usually around 50 pieces of rebar in it. And we take it back into a jig and we reassemble these pieces of wire in a three-dimensional environment in the rebar to look exactly like what that rock work looks like inside of the three-dimensional environment. And we can work on projects that have as little as 100 pieces of the 7x7 panels that equal the rock work, or we've done projects where we weld up as much as 4,500 of these panels. And really part of the fascinating part of the process is that each of these pieces of rebar that come out gets tagged with its own tag that tells us where it appears on that chip and on that mountain. So when you get into it, we're moving huge amounts of data and information and keeping them in a manageable way. Each chip then gets its own number, and this really gets back to the BIM process that we were talking about earlier, because that's so important to us tracking how all of this goes through and gets reassembled. And then these chips, if you will, are then flown into place to equal the totality of the mountain. And then we go into the process where they can start spraying concrete and carving on top of it. So we do all of that filled fabrication of putting the rebar together and tying it together and everything that would traditionally happen in rock work, and we take it into a controlled shop environment, and we add the fidelity and are able to control the process, and then take those chips to the field and very quickly fly them in and attach them to the structural still and get the carving. And really, the great thing about it for a client is it cuts down on the amount of art direction that happens in the field, and it cuts down on the amount of field time that it would have taken to do traditional rock work, because all that work's done in the shop beforehand. So
Yeah, I think there's also worth mentioning, rock work can be done in a couple of different ways. And the way that Don just described is, our chip and tab. It relies on the proprietary scenario software and methodology that we've developed. So that is which is why we're not showing any pretty pictures at the moment. So sorry about that to everybody. We do have some images that we can share here, and would love to see those actually up on the screen if those are available. So yeah, just to show a couple of different examples of finished rock work in the way that Don was mentioning. A lot of times, when you're in a park and you see, a rock work, or even at a zoo, frankly, or aquarium, most guests are led to believe this is real. This rock has really been here for billions of years and has artificial foliage, and it all feeds into the story arc of the area, and that's what makes rock work such an important part of believability of these various places that we get to create in these environments and things. So what you see here is just a beautiful three very different examples that essentially are sculpted and painted and have, in some cases, artificial foliage coming out, and they just kind of contribute to the scenic environment, and that's the entire point. The other way that rock work is done, is probably the standard way, is what some in our industry would refer to as on-site bar bending, shotcrete, and then sculpting, theming, and painting on site. That works well too. I think when you look at Scenario's proprietary technique, there are a lot of efficiencies, and both on a cost side. Even though you'll see a lot of cost as a client of ours, you'll see most of the cost wrapped into the design, because all of the design is done for this up front to the nth degree. So that, but what happens on the execution side of the project is extremely efficient. It goes very quickly. So I just want to bring that up. Kelly?
I have a question. I just realized I was muted. Sorry about that. So this is ridiculous. Like, it's so cool.
What did I tell you? We're legends of rock.
I know. So I know that going to work every day and there's always cool stuff to look at, but like, what are some things that excite y'all about starting a new project?
You want to take this, Matt?
Well, I mean, again, airtime. Don, go for it.
The thing that always excites me about a new project is what is going to be the challenge that's got to be figured out. What is going to be in front of us that I haven't seen before, that I'm going to have to go, really? I'm going to do that? And I've got a story. 20 years ago, I was on a project, and the next slide came up, and the client wanted a camera mounted to a pig's back. And we had to figure out how to build a harness to put on a pig, to put a wireless video camera on, so they could train this pig to walk across the stage and show the audience on the LED screen above. And I ended up having to go to a shop that builds vests for stuntmen, for rigging. And had to get this pig and get measurements off of it and build this very specific vest that fit a pig that then I mounted a camera on the top of.
And
Don,
Kelly's crying.
Don, you get a T-shirt too. Guess what?
And you know, the thing is, it worked in the end, you know, and you know, that was really the great thing about it. But there's always that moment that you open up the drawings and you look and you wonder if there's going to be a camera mounted to a pig's back. So
That's the new bar. That's the new bar. Yeah, and yeah, as Dave's saying in the comments, specific pig to that pig's measurements.
that's right.
So pigs not allowed to gain weight. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, it's constantly, and to me too, it's also like, as much as we love everything we do and we get to do these really bizarre, weird things, a lot of our projects do go on for a significant period of time. And so a new project is just a fresh start. And a lot of times, like we work with so much beloved IP, and you hit a point where you're like, if that movie comes on the TV, I'm going to throw something, because you're just ready for something new, and that's, to me, a lot of the fun of something new is something fresh to look at, something new to dig into. But I do love the weird challenges. I have not had to outfit pigs and vests, but I did have to go hunting for hammocks for gorillas at one point as an intern, which was, I just remember saying, we need hammocks for the day room. And I said, great, got it, hammocks. And they said, day room, gorillas, not standard hammocks, and that was when I learned that hammocks for gorillas are made out of old woven firehouses. So, there's so much of that kind of stuff, right? It's just, our jobs are weird sometimes in the best way possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, to answer the question, what gets me excited in the beginning of a project is finding new beginnings of new projects. That's my gig. Don and Arielle are, the ones who really have the tough job of figuring out how to do it. I feel fortunate to be able to, sort of create a network, create trust, build relationships, and, position Scenario as in some cases a turnkey partner, in some cases, the rockwork vendor that they must have for their project and that sort of thing. And, I guess for me, the excitement comes in the opportunity to get involved early in any number of types of projects, like any number of industries. We don't just, do theme parks. We have a great botanical garden project down in Vero Beach, Florida, at the McKee Children's Garden, and it's beautiful. Basically,
I love that garden.
it basically consists of a shipwrecked pirate galleon sitting in a banyan tree, and it seamlessly blends into the already sort of jungle environment. And this place is really interesting historically too, and to be, back in the day when the circus wasn't touring around the country, this is literally the place with hundreds of acres where they would drop the animals off in between circuits, and they would just sort of be here, So I just like being there. I imagine like, wow, giraffes and elephants and apes and stuff were just like roaming around on this property about 100 years ago. And it's just, the ability to sort of develop these wacky ideas like, yeah, let's just put a shipwrecked pirate ship in a banyan tree. None of it exists, but we'll make it work. That's cool. And then talking to people in, the family entertainment centers market, the retail industry is probably one of the biggest, the biggest industries is just screaming for people with our talents to help them fix their problem. And the problem, of course, is shopping malls it's not 1985 anymore, right? So people aren't going to the mall to just hang out as much, unless you're in a specific part of town. But the truth is, this has been an issue now for years, for going on a decade, where people have been shopping online. I mean, the pandemic only accentuated that problem. So, there are a lot of people in that market that are looking to themed entertainment and themed experience design to help them. And so that's the excitement for me, is that the sky is literally the limit, and finding those adjacent industries where we can actually help and grow into. That's what's fun for me.
Very
That's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, malls and are evolving incredibly. So I'm curious to see what the future of themed entertainment is going to bring into those spaces. And we've already started seeing some of that. So can't wait to see what happens, especially as more things start opening. We are just past our 90-minute mark. So we've got a few more questions. And if anyone in the audience has questions, be sure to type it into the comments and we'll try and get those in. But shifting gears just a little bit, my next question is, what should people do if they want to break into this zany world of themed entertainment that we are in?
Network like crazy. And not just, we have the Themed Entertainment Association. It's probably our primary association. And if you aren't a member for any reason and you want to work in this industry right now, go do it. Drop everything. It's been a weird year for it because of COVID, but there's also IAPA. There are professional associations, for individual industries like AIGA and ASID. I absolutely advocate for going to those as well, because you never know where you're going to meet someone. But the TEA in particular, for the Themed Entertainment Association, is a very, as Matt said earlier, this is a small bird bath. That is the source, and it's everybody knows everybody. But having also been a part of other professional associations like AIA, which is an architecture association, and ASID, which is interior design, the TEA is the most welcoming group of people I've ever met in a professional association. I joined, while I was still in college. Now there is a wonderful program called Next Gen that specifically exists to help students and young professionals. Even if you're coming sideways into the industry later in your career, you can come into one of those mixers and someone is going to notice, as someone did for me, of, hey, you're hanging out by yourself and it seems like maybe you don't know anyone, come talk to us. And it's very easy to drop into a conversation. I personally took heavy advantage of informational interviews. You don't have to wait for someone to have a job opening to talk to them and learn more about what they do. Very few people will say no to free coffee or tea, if that's their, to say, hey, can I trade you an hour of your time for coffee or lunch on me? And just pick your brain and ask you about what you do and how you got here. People like to talk about themselves. People like to talk about the weird work that we do. And are generally much more generous with their time than you might expect them to be. So get out there, meet people, be willing to look at things that seem less than traditional, that might be adjacent to what we do. 2020 has been a year of having to pivot. Look into theater, look into museums, look into even architecture and interiors and graphic design. There's so much cross-pollination between that and what we do, that just because it's not a job at your dream company or in themed entertainment or building theme parks doesn't mean that those skills aren't relevant, and you're still building your portfolio and your body of work and becoming a stronger professional, so that when you do get that opportunity to join our ranks, that you have something to leverage and say, I may not have done signage or environmental graphic design for a theme park, but I have done it for hospitals and restaurants and other things. But so much of what we do is word of mouth. The jobs don't get posted. They don't make it to a website. We talk to each other and say, who do you know? So getting to know people, being, I know as an introvert how hard it can be, right? To push yourself out there, be social, talk to people, make time, because you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. Literally every job I have ever had, has come through the TEA. I think one of them I applied online for. Every other one has come through word of mouth and someone saying, hey, so-and-so is looking for this. Have you talked to them? Or I've been able to ask someone, I'm looking to change things up. Who do you know that's looking? that every job I've had has come through the relationships I've built through that organization. And kind of to tie onto that before I stop talking and give it up to other people is be nice. It is so easy to fall into the traps of thinking of people as your competition rather than your peers, and to fall into gossip and all of these things. And I am here to tell you, it is not a question of if that comes out to bite you, it is a question of when. Because we do all talk to each other, and we do hang out, and we do socialize. And if I would rather work with someone who is less than skilled and awesome than someone who is killer at what they do and a jerk. So it will always serve you to be kind and to give your time to other people when they ask for it, and to pay it forward, because that will come back to you tenfold.
I don't have a microphone to drop, but if I did.
Yeah, I'm right there with that. You know, I know that the three of us have been incredibly involved with the TEA over the years on different levels. And I would say it's the number one place to start. And looking at it from a person who's just looking at the industry, looking to get in, there's professional programs now, which didn't exist 10 years ago. You can go to school, you can get a degree, but while you're doing that, you need to be doing what Arielle said. And that's how you get in, and you'll be successful. So,
yeah. And I'll just add my 30 seconds of feedback too. And, you know, that is preparation meets opportunity is a real thing. And the preparation is just being open, always saying yes, looking for those opportunities to network. That was the key to my success as well. And the opportunities will come, and whether or not you're prepared is up to you.
yeah.
Yep. That's one of my favorites, Matt, is that, yeah, luck is preparedness meets opportunity, you know. And I had a stern chat with a next gen at one point who said, you just seem so lucky. You've had all these opportunities. And I said, you think those just fell into my lap? You know, I mean, get out there, make yourself known.
One last tidbit. Humility actually goes a long way.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been awesome.
Other questions?
Y'all have any other questions? Now's the time. I know Brittany probably has the time.
I have a question. When do we get paid? Checks in the mail, right?
Yeah, checks in the mail. Oh my gosh, you guys are getting paid.
I think if people are thinking on other questions, the only other kind of advice that I feel like I give frequently and try to live by myself is be insatiably curious. Just because you are a graphic designer doesn't mean you only read graphic design trade publications. Just because you're an interior designer doesn't mean you only read about interior design. Pay attention to what's going on in the world. Read about architecture, about fashion, about graphic design, about history, about current events and news. You never know where something is going to be relevant. You might be designing a restaurant set in space in the future today and a 19th century bakery tomorrow. And building a resource library and having, you know, the places you go for that, and building a really deep bench of really, really smart people that you can call, because someone is always smarter than you. If you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You know, that database is one of the things that I think will serve you the most through the length of your career.
Yeah, it's okay not to know the answer, you know. And just one last thought that I really want to impart, because it is so much of my personal story. When it's hard to imagine now back when I didn't know anybody in this industry, and to have kind of gotten to the place that I am today. I'm very grateful, you know, for the opportunities that sort of presented themselves. But I think the habit that I quickly formed was it had a little bit to do with humility, and also, as Arielle said, curiosity, because I wanted to understand who everyone was, where they fit into this themed entertainment universe. And as I attended these, you know, mixers, which mostly were free, You first thing you do is you come in and you fill out your hello, my name is Matt, and you stick it on your chest, and then you walk around the room, and you're nervous, and you shake hands, and you say, hi, how are you? Obviously pre-pandemic, but the thing that I used to do literally was just to say, hi, I'm Matt, what's your name? And I would always introduce myself that way, even if I remembered their names for the first 3 or 4 times. I remember Steve Burkett, Chris Conti, David Ion, Seth Foster, some of the people in the industry that I first met, and eventually they say, oh, I know Matt, it's good to see you again. And then you're building a rapport, you're building trust and familiarity. And that is key before you jump in and say, hey, I'm Matt, I'm a producer. Do you want to see my portfolio? Like that is,
Please don't ever do that.
not the way to start.
And that to me is important too, right? You're not going to a mixer to find a job. You're going to a mixer to build relationships. Mm-hmm. Those relationships can turn into opportunities and jobs, but that is not why you are there. Because if that is why you are there, it is going to scream from every interaction you have, and people are going to want to go talk to other people.
Right.
So
yeah.
Every job I've ever had in this industry came from somebody else saying, hey, I think Don would be good for this. Mm-hmm. So
that's awesome. I know. I'm like, you guys can like preach, because I feel like I've been on both sides of that, where I show up at a mixer or some industry event and I'm like, I literally don't know anyone, and I do a quick scan to find out like who's already in tight little bunches of people and who is just kind of milling around. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to go to the people who are just milling around because they clearly want to be best friends with me. So that's the going concept that happens in my mind. And I've also been at mixers where I've known lots and lots of people, and I've seen people standing off by themselves, like, and so the extrovert in me wants to go up and basically be like, all right, you're attached to my hip all night. I'm going to be dragging you around. Because I had someone do that for me at the TA International Mixer. Shout out to Mama Chang. Harriet Chang literally dragged me and some of my classmates around the International Mixer, like putting us in front of people. Like, hey, you want to know this? You want to know her? And I'm like, hi.
Yeah. And we all need to be more like Harriet. Seriously, in that.
Harriet's great about that.
Yeah, that's good.
Scott Gill gets my shout out for that. My very, very first mixer, and he went, "You look like a lost little bird. You're gonna come hang out with me and Mike." Ended up at dinner with like them and Susan Bonds by the end of the night, and it was like, I'm brand new to this industry, but I know that name. Like, and you just never really know who you're gonna meet and who you're gonna have these great conversations with.
Yeah, and the life of your career is actually really fun. I mean, I remember when Arielle and I were like the freshmen, and it's a lot of fun. And not burning bridges is another really important one. I mean, honestly, this 90-minute show could go on all day. For all the lessons and lessons learned and things, we all, man, yeah, we could really just take this into like chapter 2
and talk all about networking. I remember meeting Arielle and also Matt when I first got into the industry, so I know the whole entire like the need, and your basis is your network. So
yeah.
So, all right. Thank you guys so much. This has been really awesome to be able to speak to you guys and learn about the different projects and the process and the teams and about fabrication and how that team ends up working and install. And it was really great. Kelly?
Oh, yeah. I'm every time I meet like new people that I haven't like actively talked to, I just learned so much, and y'all just like dropped all sorts of knowledge. My brain is pretty close to being full, still got enough room. But I'm I'm so grateful, and I know Kathy is too. We're so grateful for y'all to come on and share your experiences with us.
Kelly,
Thanks for having us.
thank you so much. And I was going to say, you know how you wrote the plan basically of what we were going to do and say. No plan survives first contact, Kelly. Arielle Rassel.
I know. Exactly.
I would like a mug, please.
Thank you so much for having us on. This was great.
Yeah, this is so much fun. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.